Today, we embark on a journey to revisit a timeless classic that has captivated players for decades. Final Fantasy III introduced us to a fantastical realm brimming with adventure, magic, and unforgettable characters. With its beautifully crafted pixel art, a captivating storyline, and an innovative job system, this game quickly became a classic in the RPG genre. And what made Final Fantasy III so unique was its job system, which allowed you to customize your characters by choosing from a variety of classes, whether you wanted to be a mighty warrior, a spell-slinging black mage, a devout white mage, or even a nimble thief. The choice was yours. This flexibility added a whole new level of strategy and replayability to the game. But the question remains, was Final Fantasy III truly as groundbreaking and unforgettable as we remember? Does it stand the test of time amidst the countless RPGs that followed in its wake? Join me as we deep dive into this classic gem, exploring its gameplay mechanics, storytelling prowess, and overall impact, all while going for that juicy platinum trophy at the end. We'll examine how Final Fantasy III shaped the future of the franchise and influenced the genre as a whole. So, grab your sword, ready your magic, and let's embark on this nostalgic quest together, seeking the answer to the ultimate question: Final Fantasy III, was it any good? To be clear, we're talking about the original Final Fantasy III, released in 1990 on the Famicom. Don't confuse this game with Final Fantasy III, which released in the West and was actually Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy II, III, and V were never localized for the West, so when Final Fantasy IV came out in North America, they called it Final Fantasy II, and when VI was localized, they called it Final Fantasy III. It wasn't until the release of Final Fantasy VII that the numbering was standardized worldwide. This game came out before Square got their numbering right, and was finally released outside of Japan as Final Fantasy III on the Nintendo DS in 2006, and now the Pixel Remaster for modern consoles, which is the version I'll be playing. Before I talk about the original game, I'll briefly cover the additions of this Pixel Remaster. Like in my previous reviews, the updated graphics and sound are greatly appreciated and certainly make the games look more modern without sacrificing their identity. Especially the rearranged music, it's just so good. The Pixel Remaster editions that I personally enjoy the most are still the ones concerning gameplay, however. The importance of having a map and being able to save at all times can't be understated. They also give you unlimited inventory space, unlike the original, which I appreciate. Fat Chocobo acts as a bank, and you can summon it using Jasal greens at various locations. I saw this dude as a summon in Final Fantasy VII Remake and wondered where the Fat Chocobo is from, so turns out it started here in Final Fantasy III. I guess there used to be limited inventory space in the original game, but in the Pixel Remaster, we have unlimited inventory, so Fat Chocobo is rendered useless now. Either way, it's still fun to see its origins. Compared to its two predecessors, Final Fantasy III never received a 2D upgrade with additional bonus content, so that means you won't miss out on any special dungeons or quests. It is important to note, however, that a full 3D remake of Final Fantasy III exists, which includes more drastic changes. And in that Nintendo DS remake, it replaced the starting job, which was the Onion Knight, with a new job called the Freelancer. To unlock the Onion Knight job, you actually had to send messages using the Nintendo DS's Wi-Fi capabilities. None of the 3D remake changes made it into the Pixel Remaster, and as such, you might wonder which version of Final Fantasy III is preferable, the 3D one or this Pixel Remaster. Unfortunately, due to the number of differences between the two, I won't be able to tell you. It's fair to say that the Pixel Remaster is more faithful to the original Famicom game, as it's a remaster and not a full remake. Anyway, Final Fantasy III. I feel like the developers learned from their failed experiments, like the leveling system of Final Fantasy II, and instead decided to overhaul the classic JRPG experience that Final Fantasy I offered. Once again, 4 nameless warriors have to save the world of evil, which involves visiting 4 crystals, and while the story at hand still won't hold up to modern standards, it offers basic presentation, little characterization, and short dialogues. You can see the improvement from game to game. I wouldn't go as far as to recommend Final Fantasy III for its story, but I can't say I wasn't surprised by some of its charming moments. Final Fantasy III holds a significant place in the history of the Final Fantasy series. Developed by Square, it marked a milestone in the franchise's evolution and introduced several groundbreaking features. One of the main inspirations of Final Fantasy III was the desire to create a game with a more expansive and immersive world than its predecessors, and to achieve this vision, Final Fantasy III introduced several innovative features. It was the first game in the series to incorporate a job system, allowing you to customize your abilities by assigning different classes. The game also introduced summons you could use in battle, which became a recurring element in future Final Fantasy games. In terms of storytelling, Final Fantasy III featured a more intricate plot compared to the previous two games. The game delved deeper into character development, exploring the personal growth and motivations of each protagonist. The emphasis on storytelling and character-driven narratives became a hallmark for the Final Fantasy series. Upon its release in 1990, Final Fantasy III was a commercial success in Japan. It further solidified the popularity of the Final Fantasy series and laid the foundation for the franchise's future installments. As far as the gameplay goes, much of the base mechanics remain the same from the previous two games, such as the turn-based combat, RPG elements, and world exploration. 3 takes the series to a new high with one clever new mechanic called jobs. Returning from Final Fantasy I, the Warriors of Light can take on different jobs, which allows them to focus on different actions like healing, dealing physical damage, magic damage, etc. However, the original Final Fantasy only offered 6 starter jobs with 6 basic upgrades. Final Fantasy III offers a whopping 22 jobs, although some of them remain basic upgrades. These can vary from your standard warrior, thief, white mage, or black mage builds to your far more diverse and specialist classes like the knight, summoner, ninja, and sage. This is also the first game where dragoons received their iconic jump ability. With 22 jobs unlocked over the course of the game, Final Fantasy III offers plenty of customization for your party, but its biggest improvement can also be its biggest weakness. Final Fantasy III does a terrible job at telling you about the differences of each job and just what exactly leveling them improves. Some jobs are completely obsolete by the end of the game, as they're replaced by upgraded jobs, and that makes leveling them feel unrewarding. Like the ninja, which is one of the last jobs unlocked, it turns the game into a joke and makes all other melee jobs redundant. The summoner job has a horn, which immediately reminded me of Final Fantasy IX, which had summoners with horns as well. It's cool coming back to these older games and seeing the references Final Fantasy IX made to them. The original Final Fantasy III had a pretty dumb system where changing jobs required you to spend capacity points, which you got from battles in addition to experience. I think it would cost less to go to a similar job or one that was higher level, but really didn't add much to the gameplay except annoying times where you had to go fight some battles just to do a job change. I doubt even the biggest purists will miss that this much. And finally, while Final Fantasy III might offer you some freedom in choosing from such a huge job pool, it also feels like it takes that freedom away. A few passages of the game basically force you to use specific jobs. For example, there are sections during Final Fantasy III where you have to cast Mini on your whole party in order to enter small spaces. As a consequence, any physical attacks that you perform only deal 1 damage, so you can only use magic attacks. It was interesting on paper, but it didn't really work out well in gameplay. Considering that these forced job sections usually didn't take long and are explained beforehand, it's not a game breaker, but it does feel like I can't customize my party to the fullest extent. MP is no more, and we're back to a spell slot system from Final Fantasy I with some improvements. This time, spell slots increase with each level, which is a godsend, but there are no tents in this game. You can only restore MP using elixirs, and they are rare. Apart from this, thanks to a return to the classic leveling experience, Final Fantasy III is a basic turn-based JRPG affair. The endgame dungeons could have been a bit shorter, but overall I feel like the pacing was decent and the excruciating amount of random encounters from the previous game was definitely reduced. Progression went smoothly for the most part, except for some optional encounters rewarding you with special summons. Those might require a bit of grinding beforehand. Final Fantasy III usually does an okay job of telling you what to do next, but if you want to go for all the achievements in one playthrough, I really recommend using a guide, as certain treasure chests and enemy encounters are missable, but they are needed for achievement completion. Overall, Final Fantasy III's gameplay showcased the foundation of the series' turn-based combat, character progression, exploration, and the introduction of the influential job system. And it set the stage for the evolution of gameplay mechanics in subsequent Final Fantasy titles. Before diving into the meat and potatoes, I'll give you a brief summary of the game. The story of Final Fantasy III follows the journey of 4 young orphans. These brave souls are chosen by the powerful crystals to become legendary warriors of light, tasked with saving their world from the impending doom. As warriors of light, our heroes set out on a quest to restore the balance of the world. They learn that the wind crystal, one of the 4 elemental crystals that sustain their land, has been shattered, causing chaos and natural disasters to ravage the land. Along their journey, they face the malevolent Xandi, a former student of the great Archmage Noah. Xandi seeks to control time and manipulate the crystals for his own selfish desires. It's up to the Warriors of Light to stop him and prevent the world's destruction. Throughout their journey, the Warriors of Light visit various towns and dungeons, facing off against dangerous monsters and uncovering the truth behind the crystals. They encounter a range of memorable characters such as Cid, the airship engineer, who aids them in their travels by providing airships to explore the vast world. The Warriors of Light continue their quest to restore the crystals and ultimately confront Xandi at the World of Darkness. With the help of the revived Light Warriors of the past, they defeat Xandi and prevent the world from destruction. And so, the tale of Final Fantasy III serves as a reminder of the power of friendships, sacrifices, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. It's a story that's captivated gamers for generations and continues to inspire new adventurers to this day, including myself. The music in this game is as stellar as the previous games. The game features a memorable and diverse soundtrack composed by the one and only Nobuo Uematsu. Music effectively captures the emotions of the game's various scenes, from intense battles to emotional moments and serene exploration. They enhance the gameplay experience, immersing players in the world of the game and helping to establish the atmosphere of each location and event. A few of my favorite songs were Crystal Tower, Dogon Une, and the Forbidden Land Eureka. Now onto the trophies. The first one we get is Hope of Wind for receiving power from the Wind Crystal. I got this for completing the introductory section of the game, where you fall through a hole in a cave, fight a giant turtle, and find the Wind Crystal, which is on the verge of dying out. The crystal speaks and tasks us with a vital mission to restore the balance of light and darkness to the world. With the last of its light, it gives us its power, and in turn we get our first set of jobs: the Warrior, Monk, White Mage, Black Mage, and the Red Mage. I used the White Mage for most of the game to heal my party, along with the Warrior to deal massive physical damage. The Black Mage can cast damage spells, but I used the Red Mage instead, as it's a jack of all trades. It can heal like a White Mage, deal spell damage like a Black Mage, or attack with swords like a Warrior. After receiving the power from the Wind Crystal, the party emerges from the altar cave and the trophy pops. Next, we get Thrifty Spender, Smart Saver, and Money Bags. I got these 3 trophies naturally playing the game for collecting 10k, 100k, and 500k gil respectively. After that, we get Crushing Force, Smash the Boulder, and Clear the Path. This is another story trophy. There's a giant boulder blocking our path to the west. To destroy it, we first have to meet with Cid and obtain his airship, but unfortunately Cid was cursed along with the town of Kazis and turned into a ghost by the Djinn. The only way to remove the curse is for the Djinn to be sealed in the Mythril Ring, which Princess Sarah sets out to do. So, we join up with Sarah, defeat the Djinn, and seal him away. With the curse now lifted, we can now speak to Cid and get the airship to smash the boulder. Unfortunately, we do lose the ship, but the trophy pops, and now the world is much more open to explore. And after that, we get Rookie and Veteran Treasure Hunter. I got these trophies for opening 10% and 50% of all the chests in the game. Just like the previous 2 games, this map tracks how many treasures you have in each location, so it's easy to know when you have them all. Final Fantasy III makes these a little more interesting as it has a lot more hidden passages and buttons you can press to find hidden treasures. I really like this addition to the game. A Watchman's Duty. Prevent the destruction of the Tower of Owen. The Tower of Owen is a massive structure holding the floating island above the rest of the world. If it were to fall, then the whole continent would fall out of the sky. We join forces with a man named Desh, who is the son of Owen, and head to the tower. At the top, we are met by the evil Medusa. Despite her fearsome appearance, Medusa's not that hard, although she is certainly a step up from the previous bosses. Anyways, we defeat her and the tower begins to collapse. It turns out Desh's only purpose in life is to make sure the tower is safe, and he sacrifices himself to prevent its destruction, allowing the Warriors of Light to continue with their mission. We make an escape and the trophy pop. While playing the game, I got Apprentice, Experienced, and Legendary Warrior for defeating 100, 300, and 500 monsters respectively. These 3 trophies come with time just playing the game. Hope of Fire. Receive power from the Fire Crystal. Here we get the power of the next crystal for completing the Molten Cave dungeon. This dungeon's pretty basic, but it does look really cool with the lava everywhere. At the end, we defeat the Salamander boss, who is guarding the Fire Crystal. This boss is weak to ice as you'd imagine, so I cast a few Blizzagas and he goes down. The Fire Crystal bestows upon us more jobs: the Thief, the Knight, the Ranger, and the Scholar. The Thief gives you access to steel, but it's not as useful as it is in other games. The Knight is a direct upgrade from the Warrior and gives you access to the Defend command to reduce incoming damage. The Ranger can use bows or boomerangs and can use barrage to fire arrows at all enemies. And last and most certainly least is the Scholar. They can use their skill to see enemy stats and weaknesses, which is exactly like using the Libra skill. And they can also increase the potency of items used through their alchemy skill. This class was very underwhelming. I didn't use it much except for one boss fight where you pretty much had to use it because the boss would change its weaknesses, and the only way to tell was using this. Field Research Basic and Field Research Advanced. Just like the other Final Fantasy games, this game has a Bestiary, and this time there are 225 enemies to find and defeat. I got these 2 trophies for completing 10% and 50% of the Bestiary. Hope of Water. Receive power from the Water Crystal. For this trophy, we must leave the floating continent and find the Water Crystal in the flooded world below. Here we meet Arya, the Maiden of Water in a sunken ship. She guides us to the Water Temple where we are ambushed by a Kraken. We defeat the Kraken, but unfortunately Arya dies and gives us the power of the crystal. And we get 7 new jobs. Geomancer, who uses the environment around them to damage the enemy. For example, you will cast Earthquake if you're outside, which deals massive damage. Dragoon, known for their jump ability, which can avoid attacks and deal extra damage to dragons, which is helpful for a later boss fight. Viking, they are extremely sturdy tanks and can wield some of the best armor in the game. You can even dual wield shields. Black Belt, this is basically an upgraded monk and deals a ton of damage. Definitely one of the best classes in the game. Dark Knight, this job uses swords and katanas and has a high attack power but not so great defense. Kind of similar to how it works in Final Fantasy IV. Evoker, these are kind of like a summoner but with a completely random effect. For example, if you summon Ifrit, there's a 50% chance he'll use either white magic or black magic. And lastly, the Bard. This job can buff or heal your party, and it deals okay damage when not supporting the team. Job Trainee, Senior Worker, and Management Laborer. During my playthrough, I got these 3 trophies for leveling up my White Mage to level 10, 50, and 99 respectively. I made sure not to swap my White Mage's job for the entire game until I got it to level 99. This allowed me to go for this trophy while still using other jobs on the rest of my party. Seasoned Hero, reach level 50 for all party members. Like the last one, this is another simple trophy, but instead of leveling the jobs, you have to level the actual characters. Peaceful Ceronia, defeat Garuda and save Ceronia. This trophy requires us to intervene in the Ceronian Civil War and defeat the mighty Garuda. It starts off with us flying over Ceronia with the airship, and we end up getting shot down. I randomly flew over this location and it came as a surprise to me. I was not expecting to randomly lose my airship again. After being mind controlled by Gigamets, King Goron of Ceronia causes the civil war by splitting his army into two and ordering them to fight each other. Gigamets is the evil advisor to King Goron, and he exiles his son Prince Aelus for protesting the war, and Aelus joins our party. We return to the castle to speak with the king, who then tries to attack Prince Aelus on the orders of Gigamets. However, the king refuses, claiming that he would rather die than to hurt his own child, and fatally stabs himself, ending the mind control spell. Gigamets then turns into Garuda and attacks the party. This boss would normally be difficult, but with a Dragoon using jump, it causes massive damage. This is probably the only time a Dragoon is actually good in this game. Anyways, we defeat him and the civil war ends, and the trophy pops. Waking from Dreamland. Awoke Une with Noah's loot. Noah was a famous sage known for his powerful spells and the ability to summon Leviathan and Bahamut. He had 3 disciples under him, Xandi, Doga, and Une. He trained and gave each of them a gift. Xandi was gifted with the power of mortality. He's the main protagonist of the game after he turned evil. Doga received a vast knowledge of magic, and Une gained control over the dream world. Doga and Une both help us throughout our journey and eventually help us defeat Xandi. Une is the guardian of the dream world and is in a deep eternal slumber. In order to wake Une, we must obtain Noah's loot, which is found in the Temple of Time far beneath the sea. Reaching the temple requires use of the Nautilus airship, which we can turn into a submarine. We obtain the Nautilus from the engineers in Ceronia after mediating the civil war. We return to Une, use the flute, wake her up, and the trophy pops. Hope of the Earth. Receive power from the Earth Crystal. The Earth Crystal is located in the Ancient's Maze, just outside of the Crystal Tower. We need the invincible airship to get there because it allows us the unique ability to jump over the mountain ranges to reach the Ancient Maze. I'm glad they did not bring this mechanic back in other games. It was a bit annoying. After we get to the maze, we fight Titan, who is guarding the Earth Crystal. He has a pretty large health pool and can cast Quake or Flare, which deals massive amount of damage to your party, but I use my white mage to heal through it and take him down. For this, we unlock 3 new jobs. Devout, this is a direct upgrade from the white mage. They can use all levels of white magic and have a lot more MP. The Magus, similar to the Devout, this is a direct upgrade from the black mage. They can use all levels of black magic and also have more MP. And lastly, we get the Summoner. It's another direct upgrade, but this time from the Evoker. There's no randomness involved in summoning, and the summons do significantly more damage. And now that we have a Summoner, we can go for the Summon Master trophy for learning all summon magic. There are 8 summons in this game, and you can purchase 5 of them from the shop. You can get Chocobo, Shiva, Rama, Ifrit, and Titan, all for 5,000 gil or less. The last 3 though, you have to travel to each of their respective dungeons and defeat them in battle to acquire their power. For Odin, you have to dive deep into the ocean and enter an underground tunnel to Castle Ceronia. Odin is a dangerous boss. He has a strong physical attack in addition to Xandet skin, which hits the entire party for massive damage. After defeating him, he gives us his power to summon him. For Leviathan, we have to go to this lake that was previously inaccessible and sail to the shadow of the large creature in the water. This boss is a lot easier than Odin. He will cast Blizzaga and Tsunami, but my white mage healed through the damage. I casted haste on my party and spammed my hardest hitting abilities, and he goes down. The last one we get is the one and only Bahamut, the king of the dragons. We go to his lair with the help of the airship and fight him. He has a lot of health and casts Mega Flare, which can deal over 1,000 damage to your entire party. He is weak to air attacks, so I use Eroga with my white mage and Bio with my black mage until he's done for. We obtain a summon and the trophy pops. After that, we get Item Detector for obtaining all the hidden items in the game. There are 61 hidden items, and this is separate from the treasure chest. Many of them are hidden in the environment, for example hidden in a pot or a tree. Most of the items are strewn about in the game's towns. 3 of them are missable, but luckily I got all of them. And the trophy pops. Forbidden weapons. Obtain all weapons sealed in Eureka. The Forbidden Land Eureka is an optional dungeon you can tackle before ascending the final dungeon in the game, the Crystal Tower. It has some of the best weapons and armor in the game, which will make the final bosses significantly easier. This place is located on the first floor of the Crystal Tower. You head directly north until you come across a mirror. Interact with this mirror and you'll be transported to the Forbidden Land to fight 5 bosses guarding these weapons. In total, there are 5 sealed weapons to obtain in Eureka: the Moon Ring Blade, Masamune, Excalibur, the Elder Staff, and lastly, the Ragnarok. Each of them are powerful in their own right, and I equip them immediately. Enter the Darkness. This is for defeating Xandy at the top of the Crystal Tower. We've spent the entire game chasing this guy down, and we finally get to take him out. He is a powerful wizard and can cast Meteor, Quake, and every August spell there is. By this point in the game, I had the Ninja class unlocked, which deals a ton of melee damage, so I let them attack the boss while my Black Mage uses Flare, and then my White Mage heals us up. Once we defeat Xandy, we are thrust into an unwinnable battle with the Cloud of Darkness, and then we have to enter the World of Darkness, which is the final dungeon of the game, and the trophy pops. And after that, we get Adventurous Wayfarer. For this trophy, you need to have visited every location in the game. Only a single location is missable, which is the Living Woods, and fortunately we got that. We get this upon entering the World of Darkness, which is available after defeating Xandy, which we just did. Legendary Treasure Hunter. It is also here where we get the last chest in the game and the trophy pops. We also get Field Research Professional for 100%ing the Bestiary. Similar to the last 2 games, completing the Bestiary was the biggest grind in the game by far. This unlocks after defeating the last boss in the game, the Cloud of Darkness. Speaking of which, we also get a Vision of Hope for defeating the Cloud of Darkness and restoring peace to the world. The Cloud of Darkness is the true last boss of this game. She was controlling Xandy the entire time. This boss is no joke. It's recommended to wear ribbons to avoid status effects during the fight. It can also cast Particle Beam, which deals heavy damage to the entire party. I stocked up on shurikens, which can deal up to 9,999 damage, and spam those along with Flare from my Black Mage, and we defeat her once and for all. And for that, we get the final trophy in the game, as well as the Platinum. But not until we watch a really long cutscene where we get to reminisce with all the characters we met. It's truly a great ending to the game. I really liked it. Final Fantasy III's legacy on the franchise is characterized by the introduction of the job system, more complex storytelling, the inclusion of crystals as a recurring motive, and its influence on future gameplay mechanics. It was the first game to introduce the job system where you could actually change jobs at any time. It brought back the traditional leveling system while reducing the random battle encounter rate from Final Fantasy II. It added some interesting new mechanics like the ability to summon creatures in battle, which became a staple in the franchise, and additionally, Moogles were introduced for the first time as well. Who doesn't love Moogles? My favorite Moogle is definitely Mog from FF13-2. Its impact can be felt in subsequent titles and remains a beloved and influential entry in the long-standing franchise. In conclusion, this is easily the best game in the series so far. It improves on nearly all aspects of the storyline, the mechanics, and the world design. It provides a seamless experience that both veterans and rookies will be enamored by. Final Fantasy III feels like a better Final Fantasy I, has a bigger focus on the story, a bigger job system, and what worked before still does. It's entertaining for what it is, a classic turn-based JRPG, and the Pixel Remaster upgrades make sure it doesn't feel too old. There are some rough edges with the job system, but it's still a solid, classic turn-based JRPG experience overall. However, I do think that Final Fantasy III might not be recommendable for everyone. It is a solid game, but it's simply not a must-play in this day and age, and the new player experience is really bare bones unless you already know what you're doing, which makes it a game only for those experienced in the genre. Still, classic JRPG fans, and of course Final Fantasy enthusiasts, should have a fine time with this version of Final Fantasy III, and those who came from Final Fantasy XIV might be surprised just to see how much of it was inspired by Final Fantasy III. If you're intending on coming back or starting for the first time, this is definitely a great choice to introduce yourself to the world and the writing. I would recommend it even at its full price. It's definitely worth it. But for now, on to Final Fantasy IV.